Hi there. Welcome to the Growth Whisperers, where everything we talk about is building enduring great companies. My name is Brad Giles, and today, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. Kevin, hello. How are you doing today?
Good, Brad. This is episode 116, and I think probably 112 times I've said I'm doing great. and today I am doing really well. I'm excited to talk about this episode. Something we're both very passionate about, excited to dig in.
And so we always like to start with a word or phrase of the day. What might be on your mind today, Kev?
Mine's celebrate. Just coming off a bunch of birthdays. Recently, my daughter's birthday and others. And just the power of celebration and really what there is to celebrate. Up here in the Okanagan region of Canada, also have a gentleman I've got to know fairly well. His name's Fitz, and he's building champagne style sparkling wine. Can't call it, champagne here in Canada because it's not grown in the Champagne region of France. But I just every time I think about Fitz and their sparkling wine, I also think, well, it's about celebrating. Champagne is for it tastes good, but more than that, it's the popping of that cork and that moment to celebrate all the good things that are happening. That makes you feel good, makes the people around you feel good. So yeah, today's about celebrate.
Awesome. Mine would be forward. Unusual, but I had COVID last week, so I was in isolation, and there's just a lot of challenges in the world with, supply chain, interest rates, a whole range of things. We spoke about that last week, but just forward. It's just keep on marching forward.
Got it. So I would say celebrate and then look forward. There's a lot of research, some that I have seen around the benefits of having something to look forward to and what that does for your psyche. And I know it works for me. Looking forward to things gives you a little bit of a lift because you look forward and you look up. Yeah. And which is very different than dreading. So great. Let's dig into the show today, Brad. What are we talking about that we're both quite keen and passionate about? And what are we looking forward to today?
Well, how authentic are your core values? That's what it is. Is your culture really aligned with your core values? Because we see it enough talking with leaders and leadership teams where we find that, they have got some core values and they're good. They like them, but they're not really necessarily completely true. And it's not that they're not alive, but they might not actually be what is really real.
Yeah. And there's two different scenarios that we see. They have them and they're just crap. They're fluff. They're business principles or business strategies under the guise of core values. So they're actually not technically core values. And we're both hardcore students of the research that Jim Collins has done about really core values and what they're intended to be. And pretty fanatical about it, I might say. And then the other is they've got them, but they're just freaking wallpaper. Like they're words on the wall, but they're not actually alive in the company. And even sometimes they intend for them to be alive. And what we want to dig into today, there's companies who intend for them to be alive and truly live by them, but over time they fade and degrade, and they need a little help. But we're really gonna dig into upfront, making sure you got them right. And the way the metaphor I like to use for this is it's like a garden. Let's just say you plant a perfect crop. And the crop is like your core values. Well, crops need help. They need water and fertilizer. You gotta prune some types of plants, and you also have to pull the weeds and clean things out. Pulling the weeds is like a metaphor for removing the wrong people, but you got to keep actively tending that garden. Otherwise, it starts producing the wrong kinds of things. So I would imagine, and I know nothing about pruning flowers or I'm not a person who grows prized roses or anything, but I can appreciate people that do. But it's, if you're going to have prized roses and these amazing, beautiful rose gardens, you're going to put in a lot of energy into the fertilizers and the watering and the weeds and the pruning. And a culture based on core values is the same, and it often gets neglected, and it kind of ends up a big, weedy, overgrown garden. And that's not what we aspire to.
No. So the first step is that we've got to actually confirm that they are core values, and they're not just a list of statements. There's a slide that I use when I'm talking about this with leadership teams, and I think it's integrity, doing the right thing. There's 3 or 4 there, and it was actually the Enron core values. Enron, the financial company that obviously collapsed. Yeah. And so they weren't really what was valued at Enron. And so you can do it the easy way, which is just pick some words that sound cool, or you can do it the real and genuine way.
Yeah, and some people will do a poll. What are all the values we aspire to have in the company? And it's a real strategic decision that should be managed well. And we talk about it in episode 26, one of our, for earlier episodes. How do you know your core values are right? But Brad, you and I both go through very rigorous processes. Because in my mind, I'm identifying the culture of the company and who gets fired and promoted, who doesn't get promoted and gets written up or gets a performance improvement plan, and then who gets fired. This list, if done right, guides us on our people decisions, and it guides us on our acceptable behaviors. It's a serious deal. And we want to make sure it's right. So the simple thing, Jim Collins calls about something called mission to Mars. And if you're to send a bunch of people to Mars to replicate, which is a great exercise, we've evolved it to something we call top and toxic. Taking the mission to Mars concept to help you get your top people that you would want to replicate on Mars, but then taking your top 5 toxic people who may have been very good at their job, but were toxic as heck in your company. And there was almost like applause and a celebration when they left, or a relief when they left. The idea is that if your core values are right, your highest performers who you believe fit the culture will match. And high performers who drive you insane and you're thrilled to lose these prized performers, they violate at least 2 of those core values, sometimes 3, but at least 2. So the balance of those 2 helps you to calibrate to make sure you got them right.
Yeah, it's a really effective way to understand the intangible. You can start off with a blank sheet of paper. Oh, and by the way, this is the way to not build the core values. Number 1 is do a poll with the whole company. And number 2 is to engage your marketing company and say, we want to do some core values.
Well, tell me, why not the marketing company? Marketing companies are great. They'll make you beautiful posters, whiz bang phrases, and all kinds of cool stuff. Why? And by the way, I love marketing companies. Not for this. So why not the marketing company?
Because marketing companies predominantly come at it through the eyes of the customer. And I love them too. Okay. But marketing companies are very, very good when it comes to getting things in the eyes of the customer. Now, they can very easily say, but the customer is the employee here, but it's not necessarily. Much better is this tool that you've just mentioned. Who are the people, who've really ground your gears? And who are the ones that if you had a cloning machine, you would love to clone?
Yeah.
And then thinking about what are the words that you use to describe those people. That's how we can find out what our real values are.
Yeah. And that's why I often say with core values and purpose, like I come from marketing and I respect it greatly, but I say, don't let the marketers touch it until it's carved in stone. And then they can help us to pretty it up and make it a bit more engaging, but not changing any of the content or context. And again, their intent is good, but you're right, they're the voice of the customer. And when we develop this stuff, we actually don't even want to consider the customer. That's the key. This is not customer strategy. It's the who that we want on our team, and we don't even, the customer's not even on the table. That's why we see, like, one of my team's been working with a client where we're helping them to reset their strategy and execution disciplines. But I look at their core values and it's, I don't have a respectful word, but it's like, it's about customer and it's about the community and stuff like that. They didn't know what they were doing. They're actually not core values. Core value, what are they? Generally a list of 3 to 5 things that are attributes of the humans who naturally fit in your operating system. That's it. I call it people that are a little bit weird like you. So like our company is almost in many ways like its own language or its own religion, whatever it happens to be. So we're looking for people that are in sync with that. That's it. It's not good or bad. It's just they operate in a similar way and fashion that you, think and operate or behave in a similar way based on their upbringings and their experiences in their life. So 3 to 5 things. You hire or fire based on it. You promote or don't promote based on it. You take a financial hit to protect them, and they're already true for your best people. It is not aspirational. It is not what you want to be when you grow up. I remember one company I worked with, really nice people. One of the core values was accountability. Well, I showed up, and after 3 quarters of doing strat planning and an execution with them, they were trending to 50%. And I look at them and I said in my nicest way I could, if accountability was a core value of yours, none of you would be here, including you, the managing partner of this firm. Yeah. It's like, it's not a core value, it's an aspiration. So this is not a high performance or highly accountable culture. It's a very sweet place. Let's not pretend to be something that you're not, because you bring in a high accountable type person, they're not going to like it here.
And that's what we're really talking about in this episode, isn't it? Is the things that you're actually doing really what it says in your core values, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So the next point is perhaps your values could be clearer. Perhaps your values are right, but they're just not clear enough. And people are misinterpreting your values or not understanding them and doing things that are kind of grinding your gears, but that's because they don't completely understand those values.
By the way, Brian, can you translate what you mean by that, grinding your gears? That's Australian for something. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, okay. So grinding your gears, it's when somebody does something that annoys you.
Okay.
Or annoys or upsets. And it's, I think that's the description.
And grinding your gears would be like transmissions in old vehicles where you don't shift properly and it grinds?
Yep.
Is it the metaphor of shifting of a vehicle, or is it like friction and sandpaper? What is that?
You're a race car driver. You know when you miss the gear and it goes...
Yes, it's that.
And how does that make you feel?
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah, that's grinding your gears. Yeah.
Got it.
So let's move on. Sometimes we could make them clearer.
Perfect.
So that means if you've got a word such as, I don't know, be memorable. Let's imagine that your value is be memorable. I could have a different interpretation of be memorable to you and to the mid-management team and to anybody else. We could have 10 different interpretations. Some people might say be memorable means be memorable at any cost or at any speed or be as loud as we can, no matter the damage. So everyone can interpret things different. And that's why we need to explain the core values.
Yeah, it's not right. And sometimes lots of the firms that we work with, we have the value, like that's the term memorable, and we have a sentence or two to describe it.
Yeah.
Some organizations that seems to work. Sometimes, and I know we'll get in a second to what you've done in your new book that's coming out, if you want to share that. But
yeah,
we've done companies of what it is and what it isn't. Early, probably more than a decade ago, I did some work with a company called Hero Honda in India. And they were a joint venture between Hero motorcycles and Honda motorcycles. And they obviously did very well. I worked with some of the executives, and they had a great list of their core values. They just had is and is not.
Yeah.
So it gave that further clarity and definition of knowing what it is. We've also got some people that have used that. Some people have a quote to further kind of help it, but that's helpful. But you've got you help to take it to another level as well, Brad.
Yeah. So my new book's coming out in the next couple of months. It's called Onboarded, and it's about onboarding and the importance of onboarding and how to build a great onboarding process that's simple and highly effective. To this point, what I've said is that you need to have core values, and you need to have behaviors, and you need to have onboarding in order to build a great culture. The part that we're talking about here is the behaviors. So behaviors are the we always and we never. So we always do this and we never do that, which is a set of, let's say, 3 to 5 sub points underneath each value. So I use an example in the book. One of my customers is the Physio Co, aged care physiotherapy in Melbourne.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And Tristan, you've met
with him.
Yeah, I
met
before.
him. Yeah.
He's a good guy. And so one of their values is be memorable. So this is the way that they do that. We are friendly and make positive first impressions. We make people smile with our personal and understanding approach. We take the time to celebrate milestones and successes, and we wow people whenever possible. So that doesn't say the word always and never, but as much as possible, I try to get them, because these are binary, and it gives us great clarity into, are we or are we not living that value?
Yeah, it's not rocket science. It just makes it crystal clear to help people in case there's any doubt. We want to remove the shadows of a doubt. So let's make sure you got that right. You got your 3 to 5. They're real values of humans that fit on your team or don't. Yep. You made them crystal clear. Excellent. Now what we want to talk about is, well, how do you make sure the culture that you're experiencing is consistent with it? Some indicators that we see in companies is where there's friction around people on the team or behaviors on the team. We do a test sometimes to test the core values and assess the organization on it. Sometimes we assess key leaders on it in 360s. But somehow there'll be conversations coming up where there's dissatisfaction about living those values, or you hear about behaviors that are not consistent with the core values. And there's 2 roads that we're going to go down on this today. And one we'll talk about is the talent review. That's Brad added in point number 6 as we're going here. That just popped to me. Forgot I didn't even cover it. But we'll cover that. We'll talk about that for a minute. Now there's another podcast that relates to it. But the main thing is, as a team, and there's a great article Collins wrote on this further to the stuff in Great by Choice where core values first came out, was around alignments and misalignments. Just note, where are things connected and in sync with the core values, and where aren't they? It's not just humans. Like, humans have behaviors of how they conduct themselves in meetings or discussions. But there's also policies or decisions that we've made. And I remember in a session with Jim, he said, you got to be careful. Your culture isn't what you say it is. It's the behaviors and decisions of your leaders, mostly the decisions, because you can fake behaviors. But at the end of the day, if you promote a toxic jerk, right? We have another episode on that. If you promote someone who's a toxic, off-culture high performer, well, maybe your core values don't mean anything, right? And you got to be really careful. So misalignments and taking a look, and it's a great exercise as a team. List the misalignments and things that for each of those values. Actually, I'll come back to that. I skipped. That's the second step. The first step is just to have the conversation about how are we doing on these values, and rate 0 to 10.
Yeah.
And 0 is always bad. We use the 0 scale because, in hospitals, when they're noting the health of a baby, they use, I think it's a 0 to 3 scale, but 0 is generally never confusing. 0 is always bad. Yeah. So that's why I like 0 to 10, whatever scale you want to use. But really, 0 to 10, how well are we living those particular values, and get a grounding on where you're at. It's almost like a health check. That's number 1. Go ahead, Brad, jump in.
In the research for the book, I interviewed quite a few executives, and one of them came up with a great tool for this. And he said, if you're part way through your onboarding and you're not too sure about the person, which is what you're about to say then, consider the person through each of the values and rate them 1 to 10. He said, if you've got 5 values, think about this person. Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Value number 1, how well does this person align with value number 1, 1 to 10? And then value number 2. And then that's going to sense check or a real quick and dirty stress test for that.
It is. And we'll bring that back into point 6 we're talking about. That's the talent reviews where we force that to happen on a regular basis in companies. So it's great to do as part of your onboarding and on an ongoing basis. Awesome. So basically, have the honest conversation, rate yourself 0 to 10. How are we doing on these things as the leadership team? And then from there, you can just take your average scores, then get into the alignments and misalignments that I was talking about. What are the things we're doing that are helping it, reinforcing it? Like always look at the good, going back to celebrate, I was talking to earlier. And then the misalignments. What are the decisions or the things that just happen in the company that are absolutely inconsistent? So it could be a general behavior. People are generally late to meetings or generally slow on email, or there's a lot of that, or there's pockets of it. But noting those alignments and misalignments and where you're seeing things that aren't consistent with what the values say that you want or would like to have. Not, it's not right. So again, decisions, behaviors, other things.
There's a team that I work with, and they built the core values probably 10 years prior. They thought they were really good. And then one day it just hit them like a ton of bricks. They were like, this isn't what we value at all. And so we stress tested the values, and then we went back, and then we realized there might have been a few of them that were good, but we rebuilt the whole lot. So if it's not working, you could get to that point.
You could, and things change. We've gone back. We went to an organization, a very large, well-known organization around the world, and we went back, and they're about 40 years old. Went back and reset them. Another organization that we work with that's just under 30 years old. They went and just refreshed them. The point of it here is going back earlier, making sure they're right, but then just the behaviors degrade over time. Remember, it's the fertilizer and the weeding and the pruning that we have to do to keep them tight. So once you've gone through and figured out those misalignments, there's some amazing things that you can do to help tighten it up. And again, give them the maintenance and the respect they deserve. And it's really to note the root of all the gaps. So let's just say, on a scale of 0 to 10, one of them is a 6, which would be concerning. Well, note the root of the gaps. Is it something that we're missing, i.e., maybe it's not rating the system, maybe it's some people. Like what's the root cause? And then look in the mirror and say, well, wait a second, how are you doing? Maybe you're allowing some of these behaviors as a leader in your organization. I mean, the core values go from the CEO and executives through the organization. They start from the top and flow through. But basically look at those gaps and then consider what some possible solutions would be. We did this with the team recently, and the team that kind of forced me to look for a way to help dial this in. We had a great conversation about it. And in the end, we went and looked at this and found some root causes. And then we just looked at ourselves and said, well, what do we have to do different as an executive to make this improvement, which I'll share more in the final piece. So basically figure out those misalignments, figure out what you can do about those things and to get them fixed. And then as you touched on, Brad, that question for your client, the talent review, for people that, and this just goes back into top grading, and we have episode 100 where we talk about top grading, hire and keep your best talent. But the idea of this is that if you do it right, and just did this last week with another team, and most of our clients, we push to go every quarter through your most important leaders. Not all, it'd be too many, but the top 25, 30 people. And you go through and you evaluate how they're doing, and you evaluate them on each of the core values, like you talked about, Brad, identical, and their performance. And if there's gaps, we go through 7 questions that Jim gave us, 7 questions to figure out whether we develop them or release them. And then we talk about succession planning, but to go through all of your top talent, which is like your top investments every quarter, but rating against those core values is one of the really, really critical things.
Yeah, you've got to have some way to understand, are these values working or are they not, in a quantifiable way, I suppose. That's what we're saying here. We're trying to make the qualitative quantitative using these methods.
Yeah, why do you think most leaders need a mechanism like that tool or that talent review where you look at people through the window of values and performance? Why do you think we need mechanisms in companies and it doesn't happen naturally?
Because it's emotion. It's hard to replace people. People, get caught up in the day-to-day. There's a whole range of things, I think.
Yeah, it is. And it's, most people aren't great at this part. And if they are amazing at it, then they're probably a psychopath. We've had people that have been in companies from 2 weeks through to 30 years that we've had to sort of say, this isn't going to work. It's not easy. So the final thing to bring it together. So look, assuming you had them right up front, but you need to figure out to really make sure that your culture is consistent with your core values. A top couple things that you need to do based on your analysis of looking at the gaps, looking at the misalignments, getting to the root and what you're going to do. And pick, 1 or 2 things you work on as a team. If it's really off, I recommend that you touch on it every week and recalibrate once a month. How are we doing? How do we rate it? Where was the progress? What do we have to do next? Because these things don't fix themselves. We actually have to help them along. So something on a regular basis. Obviously, you can involve your teams and everything else. Anything else you add in there, Brad?
Do something about it. If you are saying to yourself that, the values don't really feel like they represent the culture accurately, I reckon that everybody else in the organization knew a long time ago. And so if everybody else knows, and you should assume that you're the last to know, and therefore the quicker that you take some kind of action, the better.
Yeah. It's not rocket science. It's just discipline, like most things. Discipline to have them right. And if we're gonna run through, confirm you actually have them right and are actually core values, and you got 3 to 5 you can drive your business by. And then look at things you could do to make them clearer, like you'll see in Brad's upcoming book about the always and never list. And then have an honest conversation and rate where you're actually at on them today. You could use a deeper assessment, but even a conversation with an exec or leadership team can be a great point of calibration. Brad, you want to cover off the rest there?
Sure thing. Note the alignments and list misalignments with the culture and the values. Are they actually translating into the actions that you can see? Then act on the misalignments. Remember the talent reviews and assessing people, and then lead by example. Good chat, Kevin.
It is.
Yeah, it's good. It's something that we see quite a bit.
It's easy to say and hard to do, like a lot of the most important things. So, hey, thanks for listening today. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast with Kevin Lawrence and Brad Giles. To subscribe, you can just go and find us on wherever you're listening to your podcasts. And if you're already there, feel free to rate us. And if you're happy, give us a great rating. We love it. If you're not, maybe send us a note. We'll be glad to hear your feedback. For the video version, go to youtube.com and search for the Growth Whisperers. To reach Brad, and Brad has a great newsletter, a very thorough newsletter. And to contact him, evolutionpartners.com.au. And for myself, Kevin, get me at Lawrence & Co. We also have a great newsletter and tons of resources on the site. You can search and archive all the past podcasts and everything else, lawrenceandco.com. Have an awesome week.